recording. So welcome to this first edition of 2025, our Salon of Classical Architecture. By popular demand, we are starting with a lecture on the aesthetic movement. As I said, we have a WhatsApp group where colleagues can make suggestions and can ask questions about classical architecture, and we were requested to make a short introduction to the aesthetic movement, which is what we are going to be talking today together with explaining you the goals that we have for this first semester of the year, and then some questions and answer. So the Salon of Classical Architecture is an initiative that appeared in autumn 2024 together with Escuela de Arquitectura Clásica and the Classic Planning Academy to create a space where we could discuss in a weekly basis or on a regular basis about classical architecture without having to feel pressed with any other bigger commitments. So we are sort of independent from any others, or we are linked to INBAU and the Classic Planning Institute, of course, as two of the main institutions that are spreading the word about classical architecture. So as promised, we're talking today about an introduction to the aesthetic movement. Sometimes nowadays, especially in 2025, when we talk about aesthetic movement, some people might think about the Japanese lolitas and the kawaii cafe, etc., because it is a term that has been recently added onto the term, no, the aesthetic, which is the kawaii or the beauty aesthetic. And at the end of the day, this is the aesthetic for the pleasure of the aesthetic. And here I'm bringing one caricature of the movement because the movement was
No, pero tú sabes, ella tiene un nombre de
the
corazón.
movement was heavy criticized and heavy. Just 1 second, please, because I
Había uno preguntando por el cambio, me llegó el teléfono.
please remember to. Yep. So we need to mute all the participants. Thank you, Herman, for sharing the link for everyone to join to our WhatsApp group and subgroups. It's quite well organized in terms of topic, bibliography, events, etc. So feel free to come and share. So as I was saying, the aesthetic movement appears as one of the stages of the so-called art and craft movement. It is very linked to literature, and that's the main person who is leading this sort of sunflower parade, who is Oscar Wilde. So Oscar Wilde is the person which is more linked to this movement that, as we were saying, is looking the art for the art's sake. It's beauty for the sake of beauty. We are not like we are in the Romanticism, looking art for the truth's sake or looking for a moral component of art. In the Romantic times, art was seen as a moral consequence. If something was beautiful, it was good, and it was good not because it was beautiful, because it was carrying certain values that made it good. At the same time, something was ugly because it was bad, and bad, and understand as morally bad, morally negative. Then from now on, the aesthetics would be shattering all those morality that had crystallized, especially from the mid 15th century, 19th century, and they will be seeking the art for the art, for the pleasure of the art, for the pleasure of the aesthetic. They wouldn't be considering that a flower is beautiful and therefore it represents this. No, the flower is beautiful, and there is no more discussion on that. Hence the idea, because Oscar Wilde of the sunflower that they were showing in the previous picture, because Oscar Wilde, among other things, was obsessed with sunflowers and was considered the most pretty of the flowers, and therefore he used them a lot as a symbol of the movement together with the lilies. So for the in the aesthetic movement, the beauty is the basic factor of art. There is no other thing that needs to make art beautiful. There is no other purpose than just being beautiful and being pretty. The art should provide refined sensuous pleasure rather than convey moral or sentimental messages. So the only thing that it's providing you is pleasure. Whether that pleasure is good or bad, we are not discussing about it. We are not entering any morality. We are not entering in that beauty is good, etc., or any other or ugly is bad. We are only talking about things that make us feel good, that are giving us pleasure. And in that regard, they would many times be valuing things that are not understood as conventionally beautiful. And that would be one of the best shatterings. They would use some of the things that the romantics and pre-romantics were mentioning all usually as negative values, but now that they have entered part of the mainstream, they would be considered beautiful values. For example, the monster in Frankenstein, he is ugly because he's evil, he is bad. The aesthetic movement would try to put like add aesthetic value to Mary Shelley's creation and enhance its beauty in some way or another. Think that back then it was considered that it couldn't be beautiful because it was morally bad. Life should copy art was one of the mottos. Instead of art should copy life or art should copy nature, life should copy art. So we need to take what is beautiful from the art and incorporate it to our lives to make it more beautiful. Not to make them better, not to make them morally superior, just to make them beautiful. And on that sense, nature would be considered crude and lacking of design when compared with art. Why? Because it would be considered, especially seeing that we are in 19th century, we're in the times of the theory of evolution and a big growth in positivism. They would they would see that nature is just a product of a scientific consecution. It's a product of a scientific uh, causes some consequences that can be predicted, that can be tabulated, and therefore it has already lost the beauty that it had previously. Nature isn't anymore God's creation. Nature is starting to be felt as something that can be classified, as something that has evolved from something else, something that can be predicted, something that can be recreated. So we're in a time of scientific advances, and that has made the artists of this time start to stop seeing nature as or wild nature as a source of inspiration. It's cute, um, and that's a lack of design because that's what it's being told in mainstream. So therefore, if you cannot look at nature, you have to look at art to find that aesthetic pleasure. This movement, as I was saying, is mostly literary movement. There is a little bit on crafts, but it's mostly literary, and by literary I mean like poetry and drama. There is a little bit on painting, almost nothing on sculpture, and very little on architecture and interior design, only as an expansion of what it is said in literature. And because of that enhancement on the concept of beauty, beauty for the sake of beauty, it will be heavily criticized, will be heavily mocked over the years. Punch magazine, which was a magazine that was actually mocking everyone and everything in Victorian England, but actually used aesthetics a lot as a mockery. And with this design of aesthetic theatrical poster, a lot of people from that time are portrayed there as being mocked because of that. As I was saying, Oscar Wilde is probably one, if not of the most important representative of the aesthetic movement, and he was also the only one who actually dared to write a little bit about the aesthetic movement applied to architecture. He gave a lecture which is available online, and I encourage you to read out of curiosity. It's not extremely important, but it's the lecture is called "The House Beautiful." And there he gives his ideas on how the house can be beautiful. He talks about light, he talks about flowers, he talks a lot about women dresses, because remember we're in the 1880s, and the female dresses are very heavily ornated as opposed to the male dress, which is very plain as a representative as well of the strictness of the Victorian morality. So it's interesting. It's nicely written, nicely redacted, but it doesn't give you much insight on what the aesthetic movement was seeking of. What we know a bit is that what Wilde was advocating has its origins in the debate and in the crisis originated by the Great Exhibition of 1851. The Great Exhibition of 1851 was done as a way for UK to express its power in industry and its power in design and its power on the world. The new empire in on Earth was not anymore the Spanish, who had lost the visa royalties and the American possessions at the beginning of 19th century. The French were growing, but they weren't growing enough. And the Brits were the rulers of the 19th century. Therefore, they wanted to show off their power, and they created an exhibition to show off the manufacture, the industry, the art, and they were quite shocked when they wanted to show themselves as civilized people, as the most civilized nation in the world, and then they brought people from other nations that were not so industrially advanced, and they got shocked that the quality of the manufactured products or the products done by hand were much higher than all the industrial products that they were showing. So that created a sort of a crisis and an identity crisis in the society, because I realized that no matter how powerful they were in industry and military, they were not good at design. They were living back then in those moments of the 1850s. They were living on the hype of the neo-Gothic, and they were realizing that they were not going anywhere with that, with what they were doing with the neo-Gothic. They were still a continuation of the Gothic with CK, of the neoclassicism, and they were not, they were just lost, well, as we would say today. Together with that, something important that happened during those years was the opening of Japan into the world. As you know, Japan closed its borderlines at the beginning of 17th century and stayed almost 200 years, 300, almost 300, more than 300 years in total insulation. Only the Dutch were allowed to enter, to have a small post in the island of Sejima, and all the other areas would be prosecuted and killed. That gave stability to Japan, initial prosperity, but eventually it got stuck. Japan was quite stuck in time, in progress. It couldn't grow more than it had actually done. It was just in a stagnation. And the Americans, who were the new power, the new kid of the block, they just basically forced Japan to open to the public. This brought like a totally new thing to the rest of the world. Why? Because while the rest of the world had been in touch with each other, Japan wasn't. And the way Japan understood itself, it was totally unknown for to the rest of the world. It wasn't like the Chinese, who had a paternalistic vision for the rest of the world, and they had a knowledge that there was something out of China, and they could express that knowledge from time to time. The Japanese didn't. The Japanese knew nothing about what was going outside their borders, and their culture had evolved in such a way that it was not in contact with anything. Once this goes out, it will create a total revolution. People would look at the innocence of Japan, and the sense of beauty that the Japanese had. They would be looking at it with new eyes, because it would be totally alien. They had never seen anything like that. So they would be looking for that, for their porcelains, for their tea, for their crafts, because you know that Japanese, in a country that had very little resources, they created a very interesting philosophy of beauty, and that when it arrived to Europe, that philosophy of beauty that would also find aesthetic value on asymmetry, aesthetic value on ugliness, on sharpy things, etc. That started to create something, a change of mind in Europe that was the foundations for the aesthetic movement. However, if we need to talk about how the aesthetic movement looked like in a day to day, this is architecture, what we call the modern architecture that they were building at the time. This architecture sometimes is being called, especially in UK, Queen Anne revival, or in a more mocking way, Pont Street Dutch. This architecture, is the consequence of all of the exhaustion of the debate of styles of the earlier part of 19th century. As you know, at the beginning of 19th century, there was still a heavy preference for neoclassicism that lasted, I mean, with several variations, the empire style in continental Europe, regency in England. It lasted up to the 1830s, 1840s, when neo-Gothic started to arrive in a strong way. And neo-Gothic arrived as the virtuous person, as the new romantic, morally superior art to compensate the vicious of neoclassicism and its aristocratic background, but also the vicious bourgeois, new rich background. And as opposed to that, the neo-Gothic was the spiritual architecture of the world, the much better. Of course, always remember we're putting a moral value on it. That lasts over the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, and it's come to a point in which the debate has been exhausted. Houses look like churches. Everything in a house looks like a church, like an altarpiece. And you cannot continue like that. It becomes too much, too oppressive, too boring in some sense, and you cannot carry on doing houses as if they were churches, and then churches as if they were houses, because you are completely inverting the values of the Middle Ages. No, you, in order to show yourself more humble, you was surround yourself by luxury. So eventually, this new trend comes as a one fits all, as a new way of understanding architecture and art that still continues the classical tradition. It incorporates anything that has been good from the past, and it takes the inspiration in terms of historical period in an idealized version of the reign of Queen Anne in UK. Queen Anne reigns from late 17th century to the second decade, to the 1710s, and she came to power because her sister and her sister's husband has led a revolution against their parent, and the husband was Dutch. And it is supposed that that Dutch influence was quite strong in architecture, which is not true in terms of historical accuracy, but they were trying to cope off with that. So whatever the Dutch couldn't do at the end of 16th century, now the English were going to do on behalf of the Dutch Republic, which now by then was a kingdom. For example, one thing is the shutter windows. It is believed that they came from to UK from the Netherlands in terms of William and Mary. So this is architecture in which Oscar Wilde was living, in which all the people from the aesthetic movement. This is actually Pont Street, and this is what is called Pond Street Dutch, because all the houses have like a loose loose idea of Dutch, but they are genuinely English. And at the same time, they're using elements that are industrial and at the same time individual. We are not anymore in stone buildings. We are not anymore in the stucco terraces of the early industrial revolution, like with Belgravia, which is like less than 100 meters from these houses. We are now in a moment in which all the elements are showing the power of industry. These bricks are produced industrially. All the decorative panels are produced industrially, and then combined in such a way that they can create unique combinations. Obviously, we were in a time in which any developer, any builder could have knowledge on classical architecture, could have a knowledge on proportion, because it was taught to them. There were manuals, there were the so-called the pattern books. There was a lot of information available for them to create this stuff, and also they had some minimum reference from the old, let's say the proper Queen and style, and also what it was coming from the Netherlands. This is Cadogan Square, very close to Pont Street in London, and you can see if you take a first glimpse, a first look, as a modernist would do, would say, oh, all the buildings look the same. But they don't. They are all completely different. There are no two details that are repeated. And I dare you to find two details that are repeating in these four buildings. And all, yeah, probably these two ones. But these two windows are not repeating because the balustrades are different. So you can see how they were. There is a lot of elements that repeat that are similar. But look, for example, this configuration of the window is different than, to this one. This one has pediments. This other one has a balcony. All the balustrades are different depending on which one you are looking. So you have a great variety of style that is adding actually a lot of visual attractiveness to these houses, and that's the architecture that was thriving on the aesthetic movement. It was architecture of variety and architecture of beautiful stuff, and that's what the aesthetics wanted to bring as well to architecture. They couldn't because they were mostly writers and screenplayers. They were not architects. They were aiming for that architecture. They would ask for that architecture, but they wouldn't create that themselves because they were not capable of doing that. Where they could have an influence, though, was on the interiors. And why an influence on the interior? Because these people were demanding those houses. The people who would live on those houses would actually be the the people. Oh, sorry, I have lost the people who would who would request those interiors. These artists, this new generation, this elite, this modern elite would be requesting interiors that would be beautiful, that would be full of patterns, would be full of flowers, would be full of everything. So the only difference that it wouldn't be neo-Gothic, it would be there would be a lot of Japanese stuff because it would be fashionable, because it would be the first time that Japanese products were arriving to Europe, and it would also be the source of mockery. They would be mocking this movement because of that sort of, I'm going to use a word that, excuse my friend, that sissy um, excitement for anything beautiful. It would end up becoming source of mockery, and would be also be the end of the movement. At the same time, the trials of Oscar Wilde would put a nail on that coffin, and that sort of fashion and that sort of fascination for the beauty for the sake of beauty would be transformed into what will be later called Art Nouveau. We have to understand the aesthetic movement as one of the stages of the wider art and craft movement, in which what they wanted to do was eliminate the moral component of the art and craft and focus just on the beauty. That's that was their originality, but at the same time the nail in their coffin, because the moment that the trend changed, they couldn't justify anymore the trend that they liked. It's a bit like what happened with the abstract expressionism and Clement Greenberg and Arthur Rosenberg. They they created a sort of theory of art to defend abstract expressionism, and when 10 years later Andy Warhol comes back with figurativism, they just fall out of fashion. This is how an average aesthetic interior may have looked like back in time. They have the what we know now as what we could say is it was the Victorian clatterness. So it was like a lot of layers. There was a lot of wallpaper, printed or embroidered curtains, a lot of plants. There was a lot of plants, vegetable wallpaper, vegetable foliage curtains, foliage drapery. Why? Because as we were saying before, nature as it is, it's rude, it's crude, but then if you tame it through beauty, then it's okay. So that's why they would have all that fascination with nature, which was coming for the same fascination of nature than the art and craft had. But with the difference is that they wouldn't be using the nature because it had more superior values than handcraft. On the contrary, they would use the nature because it's beautiful, and therefore we can use it as sort of inspiration. But because it's beautiful, not because it's better. If we have to select a house, proper individual house, that is a good representative of the aesthetic movement, that would be the house of the painter Alexander Layton here in London. The house is an interesting mix. It's half of it is just a Victorian house, but the other half is quite a thing. This is that house. This is the inside of the house. So you are in Holland Park, in the middle of Victorian London, and then all of a sudden you are transported to North Africa. This is called the Argelian room. This occupies half of the house. This occupies this dome that you see here. So it's this dome and a little bit of the entrance. So all these things that you see with this crenellation, that by the way is called the Mesopotamic crenellation, Almena Mesopotamica in Spanish. You see them in the Mosque of Cordoba, for example. That is the main entrance of the house. This is the entertainment space of Mr. Layton, which again, I mean, we are not here making any consideration about Islam, any consideration about Arabs. Bear in mind that back then, the Ottoman Empire was considered the sick man of Europe. So anything, while at the end of 18th century, there was a very interesting excitement about the Ottoman Empire. By the end of 19th century, anything called Ottoman was meaning something old and efficient, corrupted. It was all bad values. And then all of a sudden, Leighton comes and brings that sort of North African interior just for the sake of beauty, for the sake of sensuality, not to make any moral thing, just to have fun and have a pretty house. This is the elevations of the hall. It's very interesting piece. It's almost like an archaeological elevation. But then the rest of the house looks like this. It's a studio. It has plenty of light. It's oriented to north, so you have plenty of undifused natural light. And again, you see the idea of the art for the sake of art with all this beautiful cabinetry and the drapes hanging just to ensure a bit more of privacy or warmth. The peacock room is probably the most identifiable element, architectural feature of this element. The peacock room is actually a dining room it's now in a museum in the United States, but back then this is the dining room of a house in London. And then eventually, when the owner of the house died, it was dismantled and taken away. You can see if we see it in detail, we can see elements of of a standard house of the time. You can see here the architraves and the shutters that they have been painted over to generate this idea of the peacocks. And again, this is the fascination for the Orientalism. This is not anymore the chinoiserie of 18th century. This is something completely new, completely Japanese, not Chinese. And even the peacock can be more a Chinese feature in art. We have this idea of trying to bring something different, even if the structure of the room is still very similar, because we have a paneling, we have a sort of geometric roof, which is very Jacobean. Probably the roof was part of the existing ceiling that you could have in the original house, as you can see in many London houses of the 1880s. And the audacity, the interesting thing was the way all the objects were displayed. If we were in a normal conventional dining room, this would have been like proper joinery with or without a vitrine. And here he just creates some sort of illusion in the bamboo that is very nicely integrated with the cornice, as you can see here. The fact that the shutters show something when they are closed, when they normally don't show anything, therefore allowing you not to have any window treatment. Just because normally what would happen in these houses that you would close the shutters and then you would also shut the curtain so that you don't see the back of the shutter, because the back of the shutters were, as you see, very simple and ugly. And of course, the collection of pottery that has, like all the Japanese pottery, has these little imperfections that for the Japanese were something seekable. There was something that they would be interested in. And this movement as well, with all this trying to mimic this Japanese taste for the symmetry and the odd thing, would also be evolving as well to feel more attraction to odd things. For example, as we were saying before, the Romanticism would treat the Mary Shelley's monster with disgust. They would say that the monster was disgusting because it was evil, etc. The night would be disgusting or very lonely, always associated with negative values. Eventually, These people would like the night, would like the drugs, the prostitute, the bohemian life. They would be attracted to it because they would find a beauty value in it. This is the proper origin of the bohemian life that we can still live nowadays. So these people would be opposed to the society, and they would also seek beauty in things that the society was considering not approvable. And that is also one of the reasons why they started to depart. They would also in France they would be called the decadents, and they would be the enfant terrible. This is the concept of this young person who is just totally against the society and is always trying to do things to piss off, excuse my French, the bourgeois. So this room would become a big feature. Obviously, it was the room where a socialite, a person with a big social life was living. So it would be visited by everyone. So it would be quite shocking, quite interesting to see a conversation piece on itself. And it has gone quite. It had became quite a big feature, and then now being in the United States, sometimes people have the feeling that it's an American creation, but no, it's a British creation of the proper aesthetic movement. And not so long ago, they did a sort of recreation of it, imagining that it has been destroyed. But this destruction is sort of trying to emulate what happens in Charles Dickens' novels, Great Expectations. So this is the room where the lady in Great Expectations used to live. If you know, if you have read the novel, there is a character in Great Expectation, one of the main characters. She's an old lady who was abandoned in the altar on her wedding day, and she, as a song of mourning, she always wear her wedding dress every day. So imagine she's old, after 60 years she's still wearing the same dress, which is completely destroyed, and her house has been kept intact as if it was ready for the wedding banquet. So this is sort of playing a bit with a master work of art and a master work of literature. This is a reproduction. This is not the original room. It was in the Victorian Albert Museum some years ago, and it's quite interesting, quite worth watching it. But overall, because I always like giving bibliography, giving all of you something to read, something to watch, something to enjoy. The person whom we could consider was the arbiter of design during this time was Christopher Dresser. Christopher Dresser was a disciple of Owen Jones. He drew some of the illustrations of the Grammar of Ornament. He drew some of the panels of the several editions. He was close collaborator with Owen Jones for many years until he started working at the Victorian Albert Museum, called back then South Kensington Museum, and then he wrote about art. He also worked as draughtsman for many for publications on nature and botanics, and as a result of this, he would publish several works. He would One of his most well known is Studies in Design, where he gives theory. This is a heavy book on theory of design, on how things should be designed based on aesthetic principles mostly. So this is not a book where you would find the structure of ornament, or you would find the moral virtues of this natural ornament that Owen Jones was doing. He would give you practical ideas, but based only on these principles of aesthetic movement, very related with vegetation and botanics. He would be also one of the first people in writing about Japan. And the interest of his book, Japan, its architecture, art, and manufactures, 1882, obviously nowadays there are books that are much better than this, that have dealt the issue of Japan art in a deeper way. But the interest of the book is that it is the first time, very first impression of Europe about Japan, or the West about Japan. And this is what is giving the interest on it. So it's a naive vision, and it's completely original in its approach. It's very personal and passionate description of Japan. Again, focusing on the aesthetic value, and therefore omitting all the moral value that was being done in about Japan back then, because remember that Japan in less than 10 years goes from a completely feudal society to a modern industrialized parliamentary monarchy almost without any bloodshed. So they managed to do in 10 years what the French took almost 50 or 60 years to get from 1889 until the fall of Napoleon the second. Napoleon the third, sorry. So it's quite interesting book to get the approach of how 19th century understood Japan architecture. Principle of decorative design is much interesting than the other one, the studies in design, because it's this is the basis of his theory, the basis of ornamentation in the 1880s. Well, the other one is a bit more is a development on the style. So it would be like the basic to learn the language and then the exercises to improve it. And then another two ones, the art of decorative design and unity in variety, deduced from the vegetable kingdom. So this book is where he would be saying that the nature isn't as beautiful as you think, that it's predictable, it's scientific, it doesn't have that symbolic meaning, that transcendental symbolism that it has been put up until then. I would say, okay, nature is a consequence of science. We need to depart from science and we need to keep doing art. So that's a bit the overall view of the aesthetic movement. Thank you very much for listening. And I would say that as a general reflection on the aesthetic movement, now we are in a moment in which there is a rebirth of the aesthetic. And there is things that are called aesthetic, no, where there is this if you type aesthetic cafe, there is all this sort of lolita culture or cottage core or whatever core has been since the pandemic. It's hitting strongly, all that, and they all have the same uh, meaning as the aesthetics. They just look for the beauty, as for the sake of beauty. It's what the Japanese also call kawaii. So we are not looking about the morality associated with the art. We're just looking at it because it's pretty, it's beautiful. But we cannot forget at the same time that, without wanting to look like a woke or a moralist, that art has also a symbolic expression. Art has a transcendental transcendence to it, and the symbolic component of art is necessary. We cannot just like beauty for the sake of beauty. Beauty is good. Beauty will save the world, and even if it is just the only positive value that we have, it's positive enough to seek it and to look for it and to fight for it. So that would be my intake and my reflection about this short introduction to the aesthetic movement. Thank you very much. Now you are all unmuted, but if you want to unmute and say something, you are free. This, you can say that this has been the biggest waste of time in your life. I'm happy to listen to that, or you want to know more, and then I would tell you to read the books that I am putting. But any other question, I'm happy to answer. As I said, I mean, you can unmute yourself. I muted all of you because there was some of them going, and then we have some questions around. Hello, everyone. Boa tarde, Stefani. Great talk. Thank you very much. And Maria Moyera is clapping. Thank you. Um, no questions. All of you are shocked because of that so much amount of beauty. We all have the Stendhal syndrome. I see, no?
Yeah, good day, Pablo. Firstly, I would like to thank you for the introduction. I think it was pretty wide and pretty interesting.
Uh-huh.
Last year, I only was able to assist to a few classes,
Uh-huh.
and they were mostly focused on the really classical, more like Greek or the basic orders. And that was interesting. But this approach about mostly like the Northern way or European way to see the architecture more like English or from the Netherlands. I think it's another way, really interesting way to start the sessions. And I would like to thank you so much for it.
You're welcome. This came a popular demand in the WhatsApp group. It appeared, and I said, okay, why not? Would you like to know a bit more about this, especially just to see that
Mm-hmm.
it's a sort of movement that has a lot of impact because you enter into the peacock room and say, wow, you see Oscar Wilde like this movement, you say, wow, Oscar Wilde. But then it was very it was just a trend, a bit irrelevant to be honest, and also, and actually because it was very heavily linked to Oscar Wilde. The moment that Oscar Wilde was trialed, the whole movement just dissipated. And those who were seeking the same principles, they just moved into what would later be known as a nouveau, which again tried to come back to protect the ideas of morality, etc. So these guys were basically opposing to John Ruskin and to Marx without being liberals and without being conservatives. So they Marx was talking about the politicization of art and the need of art representing the power of the proletariat and the fighting of classes. These people say, no, I'm doing art because I have fun doing art, and that's also a very valid thing to do art. But also
Yeah.
we need to remember that at the end of the day, this is something that the art it's also linked to a compromise. It has always been. It has always shown a component. Hello, Isaac. Very happy to see you.
Hi, Pablo. Thank you very much for the presentation. Really excellent, really very interesting. I would like to know if the style of the Ottoman Empire had some kind of importance in the Britain of this particular moment. I don't know if it is an important style. Thank you.
Not at that moment. At this moment, at the end of 19th century, it is not. It has lost relevance because the Ottoman Empire is not anymore an important power in the world. The the Ottoman Empire actually in the exhibition of 1873 they would publish a book called Ottoman Architecture in which they would try very hardly to make an equivalent between Ottoman architecture and classical architecture, not with a big effort, just but by presenting in the plates the Ottoman architecture in the same way that classical architecture was presented, where the columns would be divided into base, shaft, and capital, and they would try to show a sort of proportion system somehow. But again, because we're in the 1870s, the whole idea of the whole proportion was a bit, I'm not going to say lost, but the whole idea of saying, okay, you divide this in half, this in other half, etc., has given place to a system in which more concerned. Oh, the base is 3 parts and 2 minutes. The shaft is 9 parts, so it has been go to some more mnemotechnic system, and therefore the overall proportion was a bit irrelevant compared with the exact proportion of each element. But I would say that by the 1970s, the Ottoman architecture has lost a lot of the appeal and the power that it had. The Ottoman Empire was westernizing at bigger steps. You would stop seeing mosques done in the manner of Sinan, which, considering the success of Sinan from 16th century to mid 19th century, was quite a successful architecture that he settled. But all the buildings in Istanbul were starting to look very heavily westernized, and then all the other big cities in the rest of the Ottoman Empire were getting quite westernized. Even Egypt was living its golden or second golden era with the cotton, the tobacco, and the Suez Canal, and obviously all the archaeological expeditions that were going there, and it was semi-independent. So even Egypt started to get a bit much more westernized. See, for example, the old museum of Cairo doesn't look Egyptian at all. It's a Western neoclassical building,
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
as opposed to the building that they have now for the General Museum, which is a complete shame. If you want to get a positive um, idea, it's the most modernist building that you could imagine, and the most kitsch building at the same time. So would you have to give that to the Egyptians? They have managed to be modern and kitsch at the same time, which I'm sure that doesn't keep anyone happy. But the new museum of Cairo is one of the most horrible things that you could say. I mean, Egyptians should be insulted by the building itself. It's like mocking. It's like themselves mocking their own culture. It's like when you go to Spain and we start doing all the flamenco shows and things like that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And Christian is asking, the Retrato de Dorian Gray has traces of the philosophy. Yes. Oscar Wilde is this movement, basically. The aesthetic movement is Oscar Wilde. And ideas of the aesthetic over the aesthetic are here. The difference is that Wilde initially would feel attracted to just the pretty things, the flowers, the nature, etc. But eventually, at the same time, Wilde would start, like many others in his time, like Rimbaud, Baudelaire, all the sort of the course poets, they would be looking to things that could be a bit disgusting, could be a bit ugly, could be a bit out the edge, just for the sake of pissing off the establishment, and to seek something new, and to challenge that value that beautiful things are morally good, ugly things are morally bad. So in the sense that there would be ugly things, and by ugly I'm not talking about ugly objects. Ugly people were always bad. If you read all the novels from the first half of 19th century, the bad was, and that's what that is also what the concept that we have nowadays about the good character, the able character comes from. No, it's like the ugly characters are always the bad one, the evil ones, but that's because they are, and you cannot find a pretty character who is evil or an ugly character who is good. Even the tale of the ugly duckling doesn't exist in 19th century. It's something that comes from elsewhere. I am happy that you have liked this introduction. This is going to be the norm for the next 11 classes, 11 sessions of the Salon. We're going to start every week with a small lecture, and then we're going to have a debate about it, as well as the usual activities that we have been having about bringing your projects, etc. And we're going to talk about it a bit now. So we're going to present the objectives that we have for this first half of 2025. Alvaro and me have been discussing them together as well, tangentially a little bit, with the Aesthetic Revolt in Spain, Motín Arquitectónico, and with Resurgir Estético Burgos. We have been discussing them and see how the four of us can come with common initiatives that can be beneficial for the spread of the movement, basically, for the sake of the cause. So we are going to have 11 sessions, and the purpose of this 11 session is going to be give you the basic materials that you need to design the basic tools, the basic resources and tools in classical architecture, with the idea that later on in the year, in autumn, we might try to push to do an exhibition. Exhibition of what? Exhibition of young talents or new talents rather than young, new talents in classical and traditional architecture or similar titles, so that everyone can bring something to show the power of new classical and new traditional architecture, but in a way that it's well done and nicely done, not just pretty things, as the aesthetics would say. We will have at least the morality that we know that this architecture is better for the environment. So we're going to start from scratch. So whether if you have been listening to us in September or whether this is your first one, I encourage all of you to come in a regular basis. The classes from now on are going to be recorded and they will be available for everyone to visualize in the group, and we will be publishing fragments of it in social media, and we may pair up with other initiatives that are also going on the same direction. This is something that I just learned today with the Traditional Architectural Group UK, with Georgia Christea, who was mentioning that they are trying to merge several educational initiatives, and probably the Salon and the Classic Planning Academy and Escuela Arquitectura Clásica will try to converge on it. But in any case, either we converge with them or not, we will set up our own space regarding that, so that you can watch the recordings at any time. So the first class is going to be the introduction to the classical orders. It's going to be a short class, so it's not going to be, we're not going to be drawing the orders. As I always say, if you want to know how to draw the orders, you come to the Classic Planning Academy courses. If not, we will give you the resources that you can learn how to draw them on your own. The second one is going to be practical application of the orders. And by practical, I mean how to do a pilaster, how to solve the corner condition with the triglyphs, the corner condition in the volute, and so on and so on. Examples on what to do when you have all these odd points that all of you have been following us from the beginning. You know that we have been discussing them. Oh, how do you do this? How do you do that? The third one is probably the only one in which we are going to draw. So for the third one, for the 1st of March, have ready pencil and paper because we're going to be drawing acanthus leaves. So that's going to be fun, how to draw the acanthus leaf. On the 15th of March, we're going to be seeing floor plans, and the floor plans is resources to create your floor plans more dramatic, to make a beautiful floor plan, even if the project is humble. We're going to see the 29th of March and the 12th of April are going to be to see how elevations are composed. In the first case, just townhouses. In the second case, special buildings. On the 26th of April, we're going to see floor patterns and ceilings. We're going to see how you can do a floor pattern, no matter if we're going to do a beautiful Roman mosaic or a normal tile flooring. There are ways and ways and ways of creating a very interesting floor pattern by doing tiles and without spending a fortune. Staircases, which are very important because people nowadays don't know how to draw staircases. The people who draw staircases, they just get them from the BAM library, which are dog-leg staircase. Thank you very much, bye. So we're going to give an insight on the regulations and how to beat the regulations to design beautiful staircases as they were in the past. And to show you that it's possible. It's not that to try to beat a bit this common conception that you see a lot in this movement, that the regulations are wrong, that the regulations are bad, that the regulations are modernist, and therefore we need to scrap the regulations. I was discussing the other day, we were discussing a bit about accessibility, and someone was saying that they thought it was bad because they are putting into law what before was charity, and that's not the point. The whole regulation, the whole purpose of the regulation on accessibility is that people who need the help don't need to rely on others, because yeah, charity is very good, but we don't live in a charitable society anymore. So we cannot expect that a person in wheelchair, there is going to be someone, a kind hand that is going to push the wheelchair. We will need to design in such a way that the wheelchair can go there on its own, even if it's on sat. But you cannot pretend that because a person is in wheelchair, it is going to be waiting for two people to help them climb a stair. So that's basically the purpose of this regulation. The same way, the purpose of the so course regulation on railings, that it cannot be more than 10 centimeters. Those who have kids, I don't have kids, but I have a niece who is a hurricane. And I have realized the importance of that regulation now, because my niece is big enough for her head not to fit into the two bars. And that's a bit the idea. I mean, the baby's heads, the moment they start to walk and explore and be a hurricane, is usually around the 10 centimeter, which is the space in which you could put the head into the railings. If the railings are less than 10, the kid wouldn't do it. So that's a bit the purpose. We're going to see another two ones, which are usually and unfortunately left as the two big horrible spaces in interior design, the bathrooms and the kitchens. We're going to see what we can do. We're going to see inspiration, and we will be seeing as well which companies produce and procure traditional elements. Obviously, we're going to see a lot of hyper luxury ones, but we will try to focus a little bit on the lower side, so that to demonstrate as well that this is for everyone. It's not only for the richest. The richest might get prettier things, but the commoners can also get a beautiful bathroom, a beautiful kitchen, with no extra price. The 7th of June is going to be a class for Gothic with K. And Gothic with K is basically the first neo-Gothic, the neo-Gothic of Strawberry Hill, of Fonthill Abbey, and all that neoclassical, that all that Gothic, which was, as a colleague of mine, Jacob Ringwald, once said, is just a neoclassicism in drag. So it's drag neoclassicism. That's what we're going to be with the Gothic, which was basically apply the Gothic ornament to neoclassical proportions, and they had a lot of fun with it. And finally, the last one before making the summer recess, and so that everyone can get ready to prepare their things, is what we're going to call about classical landscapes. So we're going to talk a bit about landscaping, about which are the sources for understanding a classical landscape without having to go to Lenotre or having to go to Capability Brown. So we're going to find the right in between. And one person we're going to see this data a lot is Reginald Blomfield. Reginald Blomfield was the architect of Piccadilly Circus, among many other things. And he has been very unfairly forgotten in history of architecture. He wrote a lot in his mature years, but because he was quite a bit of a grumpy grandpa in his later years, he was quite opposed to modernism because he didn't have anything to lose. He had been one of the most successful architects in UK, so he was heavily opposed to modernism. He had a very clear mind in his old age, very active. So he would take part in all the debates, always against modernism, and that's something that the modernist establishment didn't forgive him. So after the Second World War, he was put into oblivion, while Lutyens was retained as the honorable exception that confirmed the rule that modernism was there to take the world. Together with this, we will be having our usual tertulia, our usual discussion after each class. And this discussion, as usual, and always, I mean, I'm keeping this for those of you who are coming here for the first time or will be hearing about this on social media. These sessions are for you to bring a question on classical architecture. You can bring a design if you want. We can evaluate, we can give you our opinion on it. If you have a question on how to design something, you can come and ask for it, and then we will try to help you. So this is that's the idea of the second part. There might be also a topic that we might want to discuss. I mean, I remember once we ended up discussing about the Temple of Salomon. We can end up talking about the Ottoman Empire today, whichever, or why the Gothic has a K in this slide, etc., etc. I want to announce for those of you who are not aware of, although I think that if you have been chasing us, coming to us from the WhatsApp groups, you already have heard about them. There are two competitions ahead that the deadlines are very soon, but they are quick competitions, so I encourage all of you to participate. One is organized by Ugly Buildings Reimagined, or we imagine that has been organized by them or whoever is behind that website. Is a counter proposal to a building in Belfast. So it's very ambitious, very interesting. So I encourage all of you to participate on this competition. The price is very good as well, and the deadline is the 10th of February. So you are almost there. But if you take a look at the conditions, it is not asking for a big thing. So take a look at it and apply. It will be fun. If you don't want to apply for that, don't worry. 2025 has started with a lot of competitions. The beloved guys for La Table Ronde have organized a drawing competition on vernacular architecture, or a measured drawing. This has to be as opposed to the previous one, which is a counter proposal, your idealized version. La Table Ronde is pushing for a drawing of a real thing. So it's a measured drawing. So I encourage you to participate. It has to be, while the one in Belfast, the technique is free, La Table Ronde, as usual, doesn't allow computer, has to be by hand. So apply for it. It will be fun. Read the basis. The prices in this case are books on carpentry donated by members of La Table Ronde and by Arcas Paris. So I assume that being Arcas Paris who is donating the books, they will be very good books, because Arcas Paris produces very good books by Maurice Coulot, by William Pesson, etc. So I recommend strongly to apply if you want to. And just to close this whole presentation and start with the tertulia, I'm going to talk to you briefly about some of the summer schools that are coming ahead. I'm basically talking about the ones in which I am personally much more involved, but that doesn't mean that there are not more to come. And obviously, I'm talking about only the summer ones, not the winter summer schools. Before that, the Beauty and Ugliness in Architecture Conference returns in 2025. It's going to be from the 2nd to the 4th of May in Oslo. It's going to be a beautiful gathering of lots of people who are committed to classical architecture and beautiful architecture. You're going to have there Robert Adam, John Simpson, James Stephen Cole, and many others, Norwegians and rest of the world. Brandon Roy is going to be as well, a professor in Utah, and many others. Professor Dr. Nirburas, myself are going to be there, and many other people, Ruben Hansen, Michael Diamond, and all the usuals in this type of events will be there. And it's very nice event that we're planning as well some activities apart from the lecture, and there will be a competition as well to be announced. To be the winner will be announced during the conference, and probably next week, because the Classic Planning Institute is heavily involved in the competition. We will give you the basis for the competition so that you know what you have to do. The next big summer schools, La Table Haute, who is doing two this year. For a while, it has been doing two summer schools. One is more into vernacular architecture, and the other one is architecture and crafts. So this year, the vernacular architecture is in the beautiful city of Conques in southern France. Very, very beautiful pilgrimage city from the Middle Ages. So you would probably, when you study history of art, the Basilica of Santa Maria de Conques appears in all the manuals, and the sculpture of Our Lady of Conques appears in all the guides. I believe it's not a black virgin, but it's a copy of a probably former black virgin. So it's very interesting, and that's happening from late August to early September. So this year is happening a bit later. Last year was in June, but probably it will be fresher to do it in the end of August. And then we have the summer school in Bruges from the 1st to the 15th of August. It's going to be a beautiful summer school to learn about carpentry, to learn about crafts, to learn about bricks, to learn about Gothic. And they are probably the only summer school where you would be learning about so much about Gothic, as opposed to the others, which tend to be more neoclassical or more vernacular. So I would say that the beauty of the summer school in Bruges is the crafts, is the focus on craft, because the Nadia and Noah are very, very focused on the importance of craft. They bring a lot of craftsmen from Belgium and France and the rest of Europe, of course. And yeah, that's a very, very beautiful one. So apply to it. I will be there from the 8th of August to the 15th as one of the professors, and we will be having fun in several places around Bruges. So I encourage you to participate. If you're hearing us from America, Flavio Diaz Miró from Indo Mexico is organizing a very beautiful one in Mexico. I don't know if this is going to be in Mexico City or in Oaxaca, but it will be great from the 22nd of June to the 5th of July. So apply for it and have fun knowing a little bit more of the beautiful country of Mexico. And from the 21st of July to the 7th of August, we have the summer school in Utrecht, organized by Let's Build a Beautiful City by Ruben Hansen. This summer school is heavily focused on urbanism. So if urban design is your passion and you want to learn more principles of classical design of building, and you want to be in Utrecht, which in a beautiful environment, beautiful city, lots of bikes, that will be your place. And there are much more. I mean, I think that this year there are 16 running. There are 16 summer schools. There is one in Spain, there is one in Norway, there's one in Romania, in Poland, in Germany, and so on and so on and so on. The count goes on. So follow your local chapter of INBO or subscribe to the Classic Planning Institute, and you will be receiving information about the next summer schools, which I believe it's a good way for those of you who are working full-time and want to get some extra formation into traditional architecture. They're a good way because you will meet a lot of like-minded people. You will work a lot. You will have a lot of fun drawing, and learning from what you draw, because that's something quite important that they do. Uh, I myself and in general at the Classical Learning Institute, you learn the language and then you write. That's how we teach. In the summer schools, you start reading in the language, even if you don't know the language, and then eventually, by insisting and by doing a lot of beautiful activities, you learn the language. So it's the two ways of learning the language. Either you learn the grammar and the structure and etc. In a long process, or you just start listening to the language until you get it. So by listening to the language until you get it in architecture means that you're going to be drawing a lot, measuring drawings, extracting the principles from what you draw, making your brain get the principles of what you are drawing by repeating and repeating and repeating. Well, our method would be to tell you this is the model, draw the model. You have learned the model, now we're going to be a bigger model, and bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's a bit the two systems of learning. Obviously, when you learn virtually, the system of learning through closed models and then getting bigger is easier. When you're learning in person, getting exposed to the buildings when you draw is much better and interesting. And thank you very much. Our next session will be the 1st of February, and we will have, as I said before, the introduction to the classical orders of architecture. We'll see what the 5 orders are, which are the best books to learn about the orders, etc. And then we will have the same thing that we're going to have right now as soon as I stop talking, which is the panel discussion and individual progress. So thank you very much for being here. Now the ball is on your roof, or the ball is on your courtyard, as the English say, and we can start like a round of question and answers or a debate based on either A, what you what we have been talking today, questions about the organization of the course. Any question counts. The only don't ask me how to make a potato omelet because I don't know how to do it. But if someone knows, I'm sure they will jump on and do a tutorial on potato omelets or paella. So let's not talk about food. It's 6 o'clock and paella is for lunch. So thank you very much. And as I said, the ball is in your roof. Don't be shy. You can ask
Thank you, Pablo, for a very interesting introduction for the aesthetic movement. What I was actually kind of a bit missing was this part about this Egyptian architecture in England. I think it was also quite popular, especially among the Masons and this folk people who were actually building those. Oh, I forgot. I think they called simply temples, the Freemasons
Yes,
temples,
they call the
this
temple.
new Egyptian style.
But the Egyptian revival is much earlier. The aesthetic movement happens in the 1870s, 1880s, fades by the 1890s. And the Egyptian revival is 1820s, 1830s, 1840s. And the Egyptian revival appears in the time because it's when the Voyage to Egypt is published. So Napoleon, when he went to conquer Egypt in the Egyptian campaign, he also took a scientific expedition. So sometimes people wonder why Napoleon took so many people. I mean, the thing is that sometimes they were saying that obviously he was going to conquer Egypt and he wanted all the French scholars to study it, but other people say that actually the whole purpose of the expedition was to let the French scholars study Egypt. So that all the big times of the peak of the Egyptian revival it starts at the same time of the peak of the Greek revival and the and a bit of the proper Gothic revival, Gothic with C, not with CK. But this Egyptian revival, it's as you say, very associated with not all. I mean, very associated with masonry, with Rosicrucians. I was discussing the other day with Alvaro. We were discussing about this wonderful book by William Pesson, Architecture Rosicrucienne, and the images here are from a temple, Egyptian temple in the United States. This temple is from the early 20th century, so it doesn't enter into the category of the Egyptian revival that you're mentioning, Herman. But yeah, it's very linked with Masonry or the Egyptian revival. More questions?
Yeah, thank you. That's interesting.
Hi, Professor Funes.
Hello, Tasneem.
How are you?
Very good, very good.
We actually, Dia and I joined today
Yeah,
because you asked us to present the
yeah, yes,
competition.
please. Tasneem and Sareen, they are two former students at the Classic Planning Institute, and they have recently presented a competition for a proposal. The two of them have been very active together with another Portuguese architect, Marco Calado. So they are here today to show what they have been working on, and I have invited them. So thank you very much for being here and for coming, because I didn't see you
Yeah.
come. So please.
Thank you.
Show your, I'm going to put, I think that we have multiple sharing, and the screen is yours.
Okay, and I think Dia will share her screen.
Perfect.
Just one moment.
Hello, yeah. So please show us
Okay.
the beautiful drawing.
So Dia will share and I will talk.
Right.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So today we are presenting our design proposal for the Garden of Knowledge competition for a site that is located within the compound of Almo Collegio Borromeo in Pavia, Italy. It's a Renaissance-era university college and UNESCO World Heritage Site founded in 1561. The objective was to revitalize the historic gardens and create a multifunctional space that blends the contemporary design with heritage preservation. The core focus was to balance modern functionality with traditional aesthetics, respecting the site's academic and cultural legacy. Here, in the image on the left, you can see our project site marked in red. And on the image on the right, you can see our project extension scope marked in red as well. The competition had specific requirements, which included creating usable spaces for study, interaction, and reflection, preserving the 500-year-old mosaic in the courtyard while introducing contemporary elements, using eco-friendly materials and practices such as native plants and water conservation systems, ensuring minimal environmental impact as well as minimal impact on the existing structure, maintaining the cultural significance of the site, and seamlessly integrating new designs into the historical context. So in our understanding, and particularly when a project involves pre-existing historical sites, any new structures should not only respect the existing buildings, but also embrace the regional architectural traditions. So this principle guided our approach. Since Pavia is situated in rural Lombardy, a regional in northern Italy, we drew inspiration from its traditional architecture. To introduce a subtle contemporary touch, we incorporated glass bricks into the traditional design. Our goal was not to impose something foreign or overpower the surroundings, but rather to create a harmonious addition that naturally integrates within the context. Our main intention, as always, was to design an appealing space that establishes a seamless continuity between the exterior and interior spaces while maximizing the use of natural light. As you can see in the sketches on the right, they show the thinking process, starting with this idea of connecting the old and the new using this glass box, which reflects this kind of transition that will eventually allow light into the space. And you can see the glass box eventually becomes an ornamental piece that eventually takes shape of a traditional form. And in the sketches at the bottom, you can see the evolution of the design, starting with the existing, which is the old, and then the new traditional structure added, which is the extension there, as you see, and then the glass connection between the old and the new. So for the architectural language, we extracted architectural elements from a number of rural structures around Pavia and the broader Lombardy region. We took inspiration from the tower structure, the archways, and brick screens, which are quite characteristic of the local vernacular. In terms of the materiality, it's characterized by brick, stone, and terracotta. And you can see actually some details here, the beautiful brick screens and some of the brick accent against the plaster, the terracotta, which we also tried to incorporate. So in the next slide, we have the floor plans, which show the new extension reflected in the walls that are hatched in black. This shows our new tower with the spiral stair in number 4. And then our new exhibition and event space, which is number 3. And the rest of the program is simple. It fulfills specific requirements of the competition, such as workspaces, restrooms, bookshop, and reception area. And so for the new structure, you can see that we incorporated the brick and stone and terracotta, but we also incorporated modern materials, which you can see in the next slides. Those modern materials include brick glass. This was specifically applied to the tower. We used a combination of traditional clay brick as well as brick glass to create this very interesting ethereal feeling to the space and through the way the light comes in through the glass bricks. And we also incorporated another important element, which is the green metal. Actually, if we go back to the previous slide, you can see the spiral stair, which has an Art Nouveau style railing. And it's, it makes the whole tower kind of this artistic piece. And the glass, the screens that you can see here in green metal is actually in place of the brick screen. So instead of using the brick for the screen, we opted for metal for various reasons. One, because we wanted to use a modern material that would be easily produced, and also because of the scale of the bricks, we thought the metal works best for this purpose. So moving to the next slide, you can see our elevations reflecting how the new actually integrates into the old quite seamlessly, but the tower stands out quite nicely, yet still follows and respects the regional architectural language. And so this is the overall view. I'm sorry about the noise here, but I can stop talking now. I'll let Dia wants to talk about the views because there's a lot of noise here.
I'm just going to share our poster for the competition. And just let me stop sharing this.
What happened? Okay.
So this was our final poster for the competition. You can see the view which is from inside the pavilion outward to the garden, and then you can see the plan and some bird's eye perspective and our section which is for the tower, and finally our perspective showing the whole part where we worked. Thank you.
Have any comments or questions, we would really welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing it. I mean, the result is quite nice. It's you have worked very hard on achieving it, and I hope that you can get a mention or something in the competition because it's a good blend. I don't know what the rest of the attendants thing, but please feel free to share your opinion with these two ladies.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for presenting your project. I think it's very interesting, especially this touch with those glass bricks. I guess I saw something very similar in Netherlands recently built. It was like a plumb between existing houses on
Building.
the street, and
There's
they
a Chanel showroom built like this.
sorry
Chanel showroom built with glass bricks.
Sharon.
Yeah, it's a Chanel's um how does it
It's
like it's a
a Chanel store. Chanel store. I don't know, it's more in Europe.
Ah, yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
facade.
Sharon. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's very good. So you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's was a very nice effect. Like those breaks uh, they weren't transparent. I'm not sure if in your project it's meant to be
glass.
transparent.
We're supposed to add a little bit of texture so it would look like you get an impression of what's inside the building, but you can't see it directly.
Okay, I see. Yeah, it gives it a good touch. I think it's and it also contrasts this a bit with the existing structures, which are monuments.
Thank you.
There is a question in the chat. It's in Spanish, so I'm going to translate it into English. Why the use of pigmented arch? He said when they are so when you get so close, they don't look so nice, and that maybe having used car panel arches, elliptical arches, or half round arches, why didn't you use them? So, if any of you want
Oh,
to answer that
uh,
question.
we actually took from the vernacular, the regional vernacular elements. If we go back to the actual black and white photographs, you can see the type of arch that was used.
Yeah, they are.
So yeah, so it's right there. We directly extracted those elements and decided to use them. We wanted to opt for something, something that really reflects.
Regional to
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah. The segmented arch is used in many vernacular buildings, especially semi-industrial buildings. In brick, you use them. I mean, they look. Sorry, someone was saying about something about heritage. Oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
So yeah, basically, I mean, they are a heritage element. It's the problem is that they're having a lot of misused in modernist and pseudo traditional architecture. Is widely used, but it is because they took it from the industrial from the remnants of the semi-industrial architecture or the early industrial architecture when there was still a lot of iron and very few metal. That's from what you took it from. Having drawn an elliptical arch might have looked more classically accurate, but the thing is that this building is just in the edge of both, so it's difficult to see how it should have gone, because if you had done the half round arches, you would have added a big monumentality that this building doesn't require.
Yeah, I think it's actually nice to see the difference between the arch in the tower and the arches in the long structure, because it really makes the tower, even though it's not very tall, but it makes it special and it makes it more monumental.
Yeah.
So if it's the only structure that has this round arch, classical arch, then it makes it stand out and it makes it quite special.
It does indeed. So it's thank you very much for sharing it.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope that you get a good, but at least you are presenting it, and that's why I also encourage everyone to present. I mean, and Tasnim and Dija, they are young students. They have finished their career recently, or they're about to finish the studies on architecture. So that means that there are competitions specifically tailored for the young professionals. So take a look at them, and present them to them, and learn through them, and because it's the only way you can have fun and learn principles of classical designs by practicing. Camilo Cantor has a question.
Yes, first of all, thank you for the presentation. I think it was pretty nice, and the way how you guys described the project and the introduction was pretty clear and accurate. I also would like to point out the fact that you pointed the use of the stairs and the scale and how it works with the bricks and the industrialization and the how easy would it be to get or to construct to build this stair. It's pretty interesting. Besides, I think the color was not so common, but a really interesting proposal. I have a question besides of this. On the top of this tower with with the stairs, I'm not sure if this tower will be an independent building, like separate all of the rest of the spaces of the original one, or if these stairs lead to just one room on the top of the building, or what do you think that will be the
That would be more.
what do you think that will be the final use of these stairs? Just to get to the whole second floor of the building, or connecting to the original one, or a separate room?
So our idea. Stop. So much sound.
You're listening to yourself.
Okay, so our idea was that at the top of the tower, there would be like a skylight coming down, and this whole experience would just lead you up to the top, tower top, where you could just have a very pretty view of Pavia and with Borromeo. Like the top of the tower is just as will act as an watchtower. That's it, like a view for space for Borromeo, basically. And all the other stuff that we are doing for the garden, that was the initial idea.
Okay, thank you so much for the declaration.
I think if we had more time, I think it would have been nice to definitely. I mean, this is not a static thing. It's something that has so many opportunities to explore, and it would have been nice to allow the stair to kind of take you to the second floor of the tower. I mean, of the existing building, which was
Connected.
one of the initial, yeah, connected somehow. But this is definitely something that that we considered earlier.
We did
But
consider this, but there were limitations of time, so we had
Mhm.
to also, like, focus on the presentation later on.
Okay, yeah, yes, I understand. When you're designing the whole process, it's quite a rush.
yeah,
Yeah, and I understand your point, and well, it's interesting that you guys have this in mind, and yeah, surely with more time, this tower will be more mm, could be more useful or have more different uses
yeah,
for the
sure.
building. But by the way, as I told you, I think the design is pretty nice, and I genuinely love this sir. It's really lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you've done quite a beautiful work in there. I hope that you get something, even if it is a mention in the
Just a mention.
Yeah, I feel like I have a feeling would at least get a mention. I think.
let's hope so. Let's hope so. That will be good for you too.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I think that as a general comment for everyone to apply, see that these two ladies, they had a lot of ideas, but at some point they had to stop and work on the presentation, because the presentation is as important as the design. So all of you have to bear that in mind, not only for competitions, but your professional life. And I'm putting you a pretty practical example. I mean, yesterday I had to deliver some drawings to a consultant, and they were ready by 5:30. Yeah, they were ready by the design, but then I had to prepare all of them to put them into the paper mode, annotations, etc. So it took me another 3 hours to finalize them. So you need to make provision for the time to do the presentation drawing as well as the design. And bear that in mind, especially for competitions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for your feedback on the like cornicing. Those details are
Yeah.
always a
The
very
conference for so long, and without your feedbacks, we wouldn't have been able to finish it.
But you were almost done. I mean, I just give you a couple of tweaks on the cornices.
thank you.
Very, very, very nicely done.
Thank you.
So, how is the rest of the audience? Anyone wants to show something or ask a question? You're shy today. Other days we have been doing quite a lot. It's because it's January and everyone is still getting ready.
Maybe a little bit. And one question for you, Pablo. You were saying like it will be interesting to do some exercises at the end of the semester for a presentation in autumn. This presentation, your idea, it will be like a project, for example, the one that they show us, right?
It could
Like it's kind like something like this will be what you have in mind.
it could be anything like that. It could be any of the competition presentations that are going to be run. So you could say it could be even a previous one. I mean, I think that I have seen today some people that I know that were in the Gran Via competition. If you want to carry on with your counter proposal for number 17 in Gran Via, you can carry on. If you want to present a new competition, you can present. If you want to show a new project, you can show. The whole idea is to give you the tools, and then you produce something out of it. It can be residential, it can be anything, but the thing is that to have between all of us have like a nice set of drawings of designs that can be shown. Thank you, Herman. Thank you for the correction. Number 19 in Gran Via. And even if you didn't apply and you want to use that, be my guest.
Okay, Pablo, thank you.
Prof. Funes, can I ask you something about the competition? The
Which one?
the Belfast one.
Yes.
So I tried to register on it, but there was no option for like you don't. I thought we don't have to register
You don't have to
register or anything. I just have to submit
correct.
directly.
You submit your drawing the day before the deadline. I think you can download all the. I mean, I am not organizing, so I don't know, and I think we don't know who's organizing because I was speaking with Herman. And Herman, unless you have discovered anything else, we don't know who's behind. So whoever is organizing it has all the material ready for you. We don't know if it is.
No, I went into this and everything was quite clear except for one part where they said that you have to show the landscape orientation. So that was a bit.
Landscape orientation means the format. So you need to show it in a A3, A1, A2, whichever format they say in the competition, into landscape, not into portrait. So into horizontal distribution.
Oh, okay, okay.
So, for example, what you have done for the competition was
Landscape of that place. I'm sorry.
no. It's I understand it's in landscape format, not that you have to show the landscape of the area. So, for example, what you have done in this competition was in portrait.
Yeah.
Like, I think the easiest way to ask those questions is to write those guys at their Instagram account.
Yes.
Are the links reimagined? Like, And I know that at least Nikolai Bruma is also part of the Salon, sadly not present on today's Zoom call. He is also quite involved in the organization of this.
Okay.
So more questions? I mean, for example, we don't. I mean, if anyone wants to ask questions, I mean, we try not to Tasnim and to Digis, because of the having previous students at the academy, I have given them a private feedback on the competition. But I mean, if some of you wants to get some private feedback on the competition, you can write me and we can discuss it. But in general, I wouldn't like to bring the competition to the salon, your individual competitions, to prevent that if later on a person wins and another one doesn't win, and both of you got the same feedback, I don't want to be in the middle of a fire. So that's a bit idea, but feel free to bring questions, ideas, suggestions. If any of you want to know, we can give you sources about Art Deco, etc. So just be wise in the way you frame the question, and you will get the right answer. More
Like, I
questions?
also have a general
Yes.
suggestion regarding the Salon. Like,
Yeah.
it seems that the homeworks quite stopped recently in the new year.
Yeah.
Maybe perhaps it would be wise to start setting some deadlines. And
Yes. So basically, by now, because I want to encourage everyone to present to the competitions, we don't want to put any exercise until at least end of February. But if in 2 weeks time we come and people tell me that they are not going to present to the competition, or they want something else, we will start putting some tasks, some deadlines as soon as we evolve. That's why we're giving 2 weeks, because for example, when we start with the orders, we might tell you, okay, you go and you draw the orders. I have drawn the orders, you draw them again. It's good to redraw them, because it will be good to learn. I think that the only one that you will have an assignment will be the day we talk about the Corinthian leaf, because we will draw the Corinthian leaf, we will draw the Corinthian capital, the acanthus leaf, the Corinthian capital. So you might have a small composition based on that, but the rest is just by now and then. Eventually, when we start with the plants, we might give you some little task, but the whole idea is that you use all this time to prepare, to think about your own project, what you want to present, and you want to work. It can be a counter proposal for something, can be a plan for a house, can be something. It's not just a detail, a pretty detail of a measure drawing. It has to be something practical. That's the idea. It's because if you want to do a measure drawings, you do it and you present it to the tag group or a table ronde, and they do wonderful exhibitions on that side. So we want to focus on something different, so that we don't step into other people's exhibitions. So it's more like proper architecture and proper project. What will be? I mean, if ideally a residential project, but it can be also a counter proposal. That's by now, and as we see how the group is evolving, we will put some tasks. Some of them can be from the book that you all know, from Principles of Architectural Design. Elements, no, it's Elements of Architectural Design. Introduction to Architectural Design, the 12 exercises that we said we were going to do, and that you did, Herman. You did a very beautiful pump house. If you are interested, I can scan the next exercise and put it there for anyone interested. I think that the next one, we did the pump house. I think that the next one is a clubhouse. I know, a portico. Third one is a portico. So we might put it, and then we can do it by the time we do the facades. We can have it ready. Thank you. Any more
Hello,
questions?
Pablo.
Yes.
Hello, Pablo.
Hello, Chris.
Uh, I would like to know if what are the specific formats for the competition, the one in Ferrari, the ugly buildings one.
The one in Oslo is going to be A3. Or the one in Belfast.
Uh, I think it was the one in Belfast. I think.
Belfast, I think I think it's A3 in landscape. I think, but it has also to be ready for publication on social media. So it has to be also in a square format because it's to be published on Instagram. And Instagram is a square of 1200 by 1200 pixels minimum. He has always to be a square, 1200 by 1200 pixels minimum.
But then what about the landscape orientation?
That's I mean I will need to double check the whole basis of the competition in Belfast because I don't remember about the specific ones of the format. I will need to read it again. I will take a look and we'll share them in the group.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they have also link in their your bio on
Yes.
Instagram to all
Let's
the
see. Let's
photos.
see. Instagram.
Yeah, and then like on the bio, so the description of the account, there's a link, and on this link you can download all the specifications for the competition.
It has to be hand drawn too.
I think that the Belfast one is okay. I'm going to put the link here for everyone to take a look at.
But someone can also, like people can also present 3D model or rendering options.
I think so. Let me just check. Side perspective view to trace. Brief. So we skip it. Deliverables. One perspective drawing. One brief installation, a description of the project. Optional elevation, ground floor plan, cross section, and renders. Render is like the perspective, I guess. Brief. This is the brief. Exemplary architecture. More information. It doesn't say actually anything about the landscape. I don't know where you have read that.
Sorry, can I interrupt?
Yes.
In the Google form, it says that the rules are the redesign must match the perspective of the provided photograph, and landscape orientation is required. So I think that's where
But then when you
it's
enter,
like a photograph that is in landscape
yeah. But then when you enter
orientation.
into the brief, it
Yeah,
does,
it's in the Google form.
yeah. No, I have seen it now. But in the
Yeah,
deliverables, it doesn't say anything.
yeah. It doesn't say in the actual brief, but it says
Yeah.
in the other document. Yeah, where you have to apply the design.
So it will be like like a perspective in landscape that will give you some space for an analytic because if you put the perspective at the upper part, then you can put the bottom part with some plan or some elevation.
Maybe we can do like one square where you have the perspective at the top and then have plan or elevation at the bottom, but then also just for the perspective, you can submit it as a separate image.
Correct. And then I'm going to share. I have put also in the group chat the the full description of the deliverable. So if you are interested on it.
This helps.
Okay, so I think it's all the times we have had a very long sessions. Today seems to be a short one, and that's okay. I mean, I hope that for the next one you come with your questions and yeah, welcome all of you to the salon for this 2025. Those of you who are watching us on the recording, welcome again. I hope to see you in person in our next class that will be on the 8th of February, no, 1st of February. 1st of February will be our next class. So, any more questions? Anything to say?
Still
No?
working on the competition, so don't have many questions right now. Yeah, it's too
Well,
much going on.
have fun with the competition. The whole purpose of these ones
Yeah, of course, of course.
to have fun and to train yourself and to find solutions to all the graphic problems that it will be.
And this is
Yeah.
it is a nice competition because it's a different one from the previous, like from the Netherlands one. It was like a corner building. The Spanish one was,
Yeah, this is quite ambitious.
and this one is a quarter. So yeah,
Yeah,
it has a lot.
the one in Oslo will be a facade as well.
Okay, yeah, this one will be the brief will be out next week, right? You said
Yes.
next.
In the next 2 weeks, the
Pretty
brief will
soon.
be available.
Okay, another one. Let's go.
Yeah, but the Oslo is the deadline will be around the 30th of April.
Okay, thank God.
So you have time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Yeah, competition.
sorry?
That will be a separate another
That will
competition.
be another competition in Oslo.
Okay.
So we will have plenty of them to give all of you the chance of participating and doing something.
The brief for that one hasn't been released yet,
Hasn't been
right?
released yet. Hasn't been released. It will be released soon. So we are just finishing the details, which is because we want to ensure that that everyone has that the deliver that we everyone can deliver what we want them to deliver in the space that we're going to ask them to deliver, if that makes sense. Because we are going to encourage an analytic composition in that one. So we are not going to be telling three, four, only one. All the information has to go in one page.
Oh, sorry. Can you explain a little bit more about the analytic composition in the brief for Grand Via competition? It was also, or it wasn't in that competition. Okay, it was one of of the other ones. There was something that said that the composition could be analytical, and I couldn't find many information about that. If you could just explain it briefly,
Sure.
I
Let
would
me
appreciate.
1 second. And because I'm going to share. I'm trying to find because I have a presentation here from Brandon Rowe talking about analytics so that you can get. Examples of analytic. Perfect. So I'm going to share here very quickly.
Mhm.
So this is by Professor Brandon Rowe from the University of Utah. So this is a
Mhm.
presentation that he has uploaded into the internet and where you can see examples of analytic. So the analytic was a system that was widely used in the École des Beaux-Arts in France to create a composition of a drawing. So the analytic is basically showing as much information as possible in a single drawing. As you can see here, for example,
Mhm.
this is one of the temples in Pola, in Istria. You can see that here they are showing the side elevation, the front elevation, the plan, an elevation, and a section, everything in the same drawing. So you need to bear in mind several a set of factors, the proportion, the composition, not only the composition of your building, but how you're going to compose all the details in the drawing. So these are other very beautiful examples of Analytic. This is the courtyard of the Lions in the Alhambra, and you can see as well you have like a background view of the Alhambra. You have a small plan of one of the pavilions in the Alhambra. You have a detail of the capital. You have the plan is shown here as well, and then you have an elevation and section in there. Or this one, for example, that is the Campidoglio. So you have the plan, you have one of the elevation of the buildings, you have one elevation and section of the building. Then you have, in this case, that's my opinion, they have left a lot of space for the title block and then the tower. On this one is a comparison in Western and Indian architecture. You're using I think it's a building in Delhi and the V&A. So again, you're showing a lot of stuff in a single page. This one as well is very beautiful about St. Paul's Cathedral. And you have all the elements, no? You have like a very detailed, some of the very detailed elements, the portico, everything is included. Or this one about the Pantheon of Agrippa, including like a very cute representation of the Corinthian capital. The Pantheon, the Tempieto, these are like more like, but you get an idea of how these drawings are presented. Some of them are a bit more formal. This is a typical exercise that they do in the United States. Like the first formal exercise is to design an attitude. So you can see how everything here is presented and included, framed into the wall. This is just very quick examples done by students, like site examples. You take the example from site, and then a bit more formal. These ones, as you can see, they have been made by computer, so it's not something that it can only be done by hand. But I think you get the idea. No, these are this is another ones in the sense you're adding different elements. This is very nice because you're adding the building here as a background and then some other details. This is very nicely done. This one as well. You get a glimpse to the landscape, and you go from several stages. So this is like a rough analytic process. You will have to do a lot of sketches, a lot of thinking, a lot of considerations in how you're going to compose, so that by the moment you start properly drawing, you know what's going to be here. But you can see here, for example, this for the Church of Il Redentore in Venice. You have half of the facade, a detail, you have a section, you have the plan, you have everything you need to understand your design, and more others. So these are for houses or for any other thing, or for any other building that you might want to imagine. So these again, more examples, rendered without rendered. You can also see a bit the quality. Some of them have more quality, some of them will have less quality. This has been done in CAD, for example, and you can see here how, because of the nature of the CAD, everything just is overimposed, and then here they have done it in a bit of a more nicely way. But I think that you get a good glimpse and a good idea of how the analytic works. So that's basically the idea of the composition that we're going to encourage everyone to do for the composition in Oslo.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. Yeah,
The
you can have the nice results.
Sorry?
The analysis for Alhambra used that as an inspiration when I was doing the Mughal pavilion.
Correct. I can see where you took the inspiration from.
Yeah.
So that's good. So that's basically the idea. It's not only present a pretty drawing, but also the pretty drawing is pretty presented.
Of course. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Any more questions? I have received from, I don't know if Isaac is still Isaac. Isaac has shared a link with me to join to a group. I think it's from a colleague who has presented here previously. But he's only in Spanish. So I'm going to leave the link here for anyone wanting to join. Oops, where it is. Because I think they're probably going to start very soon. So If anyone wants to join, they feel free to join. And basically, we are going to leave it here. The recording is there available for anyone who wants to listen to us. And thank you very much for having been here today in this first class of 2025, this first session of 2025 of our Salon of Classical Architecture. I will see all of you on the 1st of February for our next session. Thank you very much, and bye. Have a lovely weekend you all, and a lovely starting of the weekend.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.
Thank you. So don't forget to, if you want to join to the Mexican lecture now, it's things are getting excited. More and more events happening, which is always very good. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.